2024 might just be the year for horrors, and in a different turn from the bat crap crazy The Substance, now we've got a quiet and isolated family horror, Never Let Go, that stars Halle Berry. Is this one going to be worth a trip to the theater? As an evil takes over the world beyond their front doorstep, the only protection for a mother and her twin sons is their house and their family's protective bond. Needing to stay connected at all times, they cling to one another, urging each other to never let go. But when the ties that bind them together are severed, a terrifying fight for survival begins. So just like with the thriller Strange Darling, this movie I think works best if you avoid as many trailers and spoilers as you can. Now I'm going to be pretty vague on any plot points just so that you can experience the thrills and the chills the same way that I did. I mean, I didn't even see a trailer for this. I went in completely blind. Now the premise, it's pretty straightforward. We meet a family of a mom and her two sons who are living in this intensely isolated area of a forest. They don't have electricity or any communication with the outside world, and they've chosen to live this way because their family house is believed to serve as protection from an evil that has invaded the world. Now, Halle Berry's character is established to come across as slightly sketchy. She's cagey, obviously terrified, but small moments are created to build doubt within our minds as to whether or not her fears are valid. And I love what this sets up for the narrative. The atmosphere, it's daunting, and it's even foreboding thanks to the overgrown forest and the primitive living conditions. Berry feels presences, and we sometimes get to see what she sees, but I was never sure if her visions could be trusted. And I was vacillating through my doubts and assumptions. Thankfully, this kept me guessing right up until the literal very end of the movie. Now, the visuals we see, they're wonderfully crafted, mostly utilizing a less is more approach to maximize the creepy, unsettled feelings. We see shadowy things occasionally, but more often than seeing things, we get to hear sounds that can make the hairs on your neck stand up. Now, I think the reason this works so well is because the actors all create such a mood that I believed their apprehension and terror. They were so vividly terrified that it translated through the screens in ways that just put me on edge. And again, I still had no idea if what was happening was real or if it was just this mass delusion that the family was experiencing. But that didn't diminish the effect of the anxiety in any way. Now, Halle Berry is excellent in this role. She's convincing in her exuberance and caution, and she's so leery and vigilant that she can sometimes appear cruel and very controlling. And even when she is hedging towards behaviors that might turn you against her, she still retains this layer of love and protection for her kids. It might be warped, but it's also endearing. And then we got the actors who portray her two sons, Anthony B. Jenkins and Percy Daggs IV. They play Samuel and Nolan, respectively. Now, Jenkins was most recently in the Netflix horror The Deliverance, where he was a standout within the cast. Here, he does that again. Samuel is the brother that is more of the rule follower. He's barely older, but has more of an old soul compared to Nolan, who's way more adventurous, even slightly skeptical. And the dynamic between the two brothers, it's sweet, sometimes humorous, and then other times it's pretty contentious as tensions rise and then emotions flare. Now, Daggs as Nolan has a curiosity that makes him simultaneously a little naive and then wary. And it seems like those can't coincide, but Daggs captures the conflicting traits with ease. Now, even with the less is more approach, we still are treated to some very unsettling and even nasty visuals, so that it's not just an auditory freakout that we get to experience, but when the imagery needs to get weird or nasty, it does so with convincing makeup and practical effects. And thanks to what we're shown, the uncertainty of truth, it's still maintained. I mean, is what the characters see really there, or is it all just imagined? And this question keeps the established anxiety building and then maintains it through to the conclusion. Now, as I was watching, I got small inklings of a Shyamalan movie. I mean, not centered around twist or even story arc, but just the general vibe of the production. Now, I don't count that as a negative, although it did make this portion of the narrative feel a little less original. Now, I don't always mention or even discuss the set designs for films, but here, the house and the surrounding forest, they're characters within the story, and they're crafted and then used in mesmerizing and terrifying ways. Now, I'd mentioned that the family home is decrepit, seriously isolated, but it's not just the outward facade of the house that creates the unease. Inside, the home is filled with mason jars that are filled with all sorts of liquids and some weird substances. In the door frames, they have inscriptions carved into them, serving as sort of a talisman to help protect the family. And then there are strange carvings scattered throughout surfaces, leaning heavily into a superstition or a faith in whatever the carvings represent, that they'll serve as protection. And because the house doesn't have electricity, the oil lamps and the candles that are used, they give off a very dim and warm light, casting all sorts of moving and creepy shadows, even from innocuous items like chairs or decor. And then there's a rope that's used in protection. Just like with the house, the rope serves as a powerful character within the story, one that the human characters are bound to. Pun intended there. But the rope, it signifies a lifeline, also a connection. I mean, not only between the family, but with their past as well. And it's a great visual that's layered within its context. And then we got the forest. Portions appear almost more like swampish terrains with moss and tree roots popping up all over the place. It's certainly a treacherous topography with uneven ground and all sorts of obstacles that could twist an ankle or hide a nefarious entity. And the lush greens create this false sense of serenity, the calm and the quiet of the forest. Devoid of a lot of animal life, it creates a setting that in other instances could be relaxing. But thanks to the fear that the family lives with, that quiet, it's threatening, allowing any of their movements to give away their position. Now, I do have some questions when it comes to the rope and the forest as a combo, but they're more nitpicks than anything. I mean, it doesn't affect the outcome of the story or the suspense, just more minor ideas that had me pondering some of the logic. Now, the slow burn nature of this arc could make it feel a little slow, but really, this is more of an upward linear progression. And while the dread patiently builds, it actually compounds on itself, leading to situations that are nail-biting and unexpected. And when we get to the end, I do believe that a true resolution and answer are provided to clear up any confusion and then help remove doubt. And that doesn't mean that everything is explained. It just means that the story doesn't leave us dangling in supposition. Now, sometimes it's aggravating. We want a little obscurity to create conversation. The opposite is also true. Without at least some solid answers, that obscurity, it creates doubt that the filmmakers and writers actually knew what they were writing about. And then they cheated by not providing a resolution. Now, for me, I enjoyed the ride, especially because I was in constant doubt of where I landed with the actions, the visuals, and the emotions. So overall, Halle Berry, Anthony B. Jenkins, and Percy Daggs IV nail their roles as a struggling family living in constant fear that may bring about madness. The set designs, sounds, and practical effects all work together to craft an immersive and eerie atmosphere, consistently adding to the dread and stress that's accentuated thanks to the actors' enthralling transparency of emotions. The story is harrowing and full of both sadness and hope, alternating between them to build a palpable thriller that is going to make you jump, wince, and maybe even squirm in your seat. There's no sex or nudity, some profanity, and then some very gnarly violence. I give Never Let Go 4 out of 5 couches. This was an unexpected thrill ride, and it's just one more addition to 2024's win column. So if you could, would you choose to live out in the boonies away from everybody, or do you need a little interaction with people and things? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.